What's up, everybody? I just wanted to take a couple minutes and make a video and kind of explain a couple things. I mean, I could write a bunch of paragraphs and throw it on Facebook, but, who reads those? So, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but it is something that needs to be explained because there's a lot of hate going around and it's not necessarily smart. So this has to do with what happened in Chattanooga. Shitty scenario, obviously it's tragic for the families, and the community, service members. It's not good. Service members were killed on U.S. soil by a radical Islam, and a lot of people are hating on President Obama, and I've seen some pretty dark comments out there. I mean, there's everything from racism to talking about assassinating him for not flying a flag at half-staff. So here's how this works. The president can't. See, in order for the flags to be flown at half-staff on a federal level, that's everywhere in the state, at every federal building, or everywhere in the country, the president has to issue a proclamation, and there has to be reasonable grounds, according to White House flag protocol. This is for national tragedies where there's heavy civilian casualties, and when there's a death of a prominent political figure, or a foreign dignitary, or there's a couple little scenarios in there, but this ultimately boils down to technicality, and it's a shady one, and there should be an exception for this, and there is, but I'll get into that later. The service members that were killed were technically in the line of duty, which means that there was no civilian loss. And again, I completely disagree with this particular scenario, but I'll point your hatred in the right direction in a second. There have been incidents, obviously national tragedies, like 9/11, Sandy Hook, what's another one? I can't really think of Boston. Wow, sorry to everyone in Boston. Those were civilian casualties. It was Katrina and stuff like that too. It wasn't as technical as this, so a proclamation was obviously ordered. So with that being said, it's not Obama's fault this time. I do stick up for him a lot, but I obviously disagree with a lot of things he does, but the times I do stick up for him, usually because it's not his fault. Usually something is wrong, but it's not his responsibility. So here's my problem with the half-staff flag flying and Chattanooga, and this is what your problem should be if you're one of those people complaining that the flags are not being flown at half-staff. You need to take that up with Congress and your state legislators, your state government, your governors specifically. The Congress has the right to form a joint resolution between the House and the Senate to basically provide one of those exceptions so that the flag can be flown at half-staff. There are, hang on, let me count, 535 members of Congress right now, at any given time. There's 100 in the House and 435 in the Senate, I think. Or no, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. Either way, they're all idiots. So, yeah, not one of them has made an attempt to form a joint resolution, and I've checked. The only thing I've found is this morning, John Bonner, that's another idiot, he declared the flag should be flown at half-staff in Ohio, I believe. That's about it. I mean, the Chattanooga, obviously their state government is doing it, and a few other states, but nobody on the federal level, like nobody in the White House has said anything about it. In their own home states, I should say. It's mostly been the in-state senator, or the in-state governors, and the localized governments. So yeah, rather than hate one president, you should probably take at issue with the 535 members of Congress also, because it is actually their responsibility to form that joint resolution, and the president's hands are tied completely on that. So yeah, as far as the rest of the states, you need to take it up with them too. Go picket the governors, do it. I mean, do what you people do best, protest. I don't, write angry letters, burn teddy bears, do whatever you gotta do. It's ultimately the state's responsibility to issue that proclamation. But there can't be a federal proclamation for that unless it was heavy civilian casualties or a prominent political figure, which again sucks. The reason for that is because if the president were to issue a proclamation somehow, if it were possible, to honor those servicemen, there would be a permanent obligation for every single president from then on to basically pick and choose every single service member to honor with a federal half-staff flying proclamation every single time, which would be extremely overwhelming, and it would be disgraceful to those who weren't picked. And it would just turn into a big ball of yarn, and it would be nasty. It's pretty much the same thing as the Supreme Court. If they issue a ruling, it becomes a law from then on. For example, Miranda, everybody knows that, the Miranda laws. I think it was back in '72, a guy named Miranda, ran into some legal problems, and during the trial, he basically incriminated himself because he wasn't aware of these rights that he had. So the Supreme Court issued from then on, everybody was to be issued these rights upon arrest, and now we have Miranda rights. So that's how laws come to be. Aside from the usual, legislator writes it up and everybody else approves it, but that's a judiciary branch. So federal proclamations is the executive branch. That's their way of putting things into effect. And there's all kinds of different levels. But if the president were to try to issue a proclamation, it'd be a train wreck. And it's just not possible. But with that said, this is obviously it's not a new scenario, because there have been service members killed by radical militants on U.S. soil before, pretty frequently actually in the last 50 or so years. But this is just becoming a hot issue again, just like anything else that we go through, Ferguson, anything. So people naturally just want to blame the president, but you gotta know how these things work and know who to blame before you place blame. It's just, it's how life works. So I guess take this as a good example, a good opportunity. Don't be afraid to abuse Google if you don't know something. And just most of the problems with the government, they're in Congress. That's where all the corruption is. That's where all the backhanded deals are. The budget tantrums. I mean, you guys remember 2 government shutdowns. That was the Republicans in Congress. They didn't want to pass a vanilla budget. They wanted their little stipulations onto it, and look what that problem. Look at all the problems that caused. So, I mean, this specific scenario with Chattanooga has nothing to do with the president as far as flying the flag at half-staff. He has no control over White House flag protocol. If that were to change, that would have to go through Congress. They would have to write up a bill, approve it, do all this, all that, and then it would have to be put into effect by the executive branch. But first it has to go through Congress, which is the legislature. So that's the beauty of our government. So yeah. So I wanted to add really quick another piece of misinformation that's floating around is that when Whitney Houston died, the flag was flown at half-staff, and that the president allegedly ordered this. And that's a load of BS. There are websites you can go to, including the White House's own website, that list every presidential proclamation. And that particular decree was issued by Governor Chris Christie in New Jersey, I believe. And that was, again, only for that state. That has no effect on federal protocol. And if federal buildings were to fly their flags at half-staff without the federal proclamation, they would actually get in trouble. That's a violation of flag protocol. So, and there's a difference between the ethics of flying a flag that citizens are supposed to follow and the actual flag protocol that the government buildings are ordered to follow. So, yeah, again, that Whitney Houston, no, she's dead. She died of an overdose. There's no reason for her to have had that proclamation made, and it was not. So yeah, Google.